I'm fantasy author J.M. Williams.
And you want to talk a little bit about this event coming up?
So this Saturday, I'm going to be doing a book reading from my novel In the Valley of Magic, and follow up with some Q&A and meet and greet, talking about what it's like being an author, an English language author here in Korea, some of the different authors and groups that I work with, the publisher that I work with, and just to open up for questions. Anybody who has questions about getting into writing, the writing industry, self-publishing, traditional publishing, anything like that.
So you got all kinds of really cool stuff that you're going to be talking about. And In the Valley of Magic, can you tell us a little bit about that book?
So right. So just a reminder that this Saturday from 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a book reading and an author meet and greet at the Camp Humphrey Library. And I will be reading from my book In the Valley of Magic. It was published about last summer. And it's a traditional fantasy novel. It deals with wizards and magic and conspiracy. But the thing that makes this book unique is it has a different sort of narrative structure. Instead of the novel following a single character throughout the entire book, every chapter is from the point of view of a different character. So essentially what you have is a linear novel plot, but the baton of point of view is passed between character and character as the story progresses. So you're jumping from a new character to a new character to a new character, and each character is discovering or uncovering a little bit of more of the mystery as time goes on. And I've kind of called this a short story novel. I started out as a short story writer, and so my first book I dove in with what I know best, which is short story writing, and tried to bind it into a novel format, and it turned out pretty interesting, I think.
All right, that sounds really cool. I like that, especially with the point of views. Everyone's gonna have a different way that they look at the world, and that's something we as humans do. Is everyone has a different perspective. So being able to see that throughout this novel is gonna be really cool.
Exactly, and you get some characters who are heroic characters, and some killer characters who are more villainous characters, and so you're seeing it all takes place in Marudal, which is the city of magic, and you're seeing all different walks of life that take place in the city, from the criminal underbelly, the city watch, the wizards council, all these different angles of the city. You get into that through the different characters and different perspectives.
That's awesome. So switching gears a little bit on this one, let's talk about you as an author. How is it being an English language author living here in Korea, where that's not the primary language?
It's very difficult. The biggest author event that I've done so far was Comic-Con, which was really fun. I met a lot of people, had an interesting experience. But doing Comic-Con in Korea as an English language prose author, it was a struggle to try to sell my product. Visual products were a lot more popular, and there's some bookstores in Seoul, English language bookstores in Seoul, that will sell local authors, but it's very difficult to find venues and places to post your books.
Gotcha. So, what actually got you into writing? As an author, what kind of what authors inspired you, or it helped influence you throughout your career?
I started writing in elementary school. I had a knack for horror and gore, which I kind of outlived. I read Stephen King's biography, and I noticed a lot of things similar between him and myself, although I outgrew my horror and grew into fantasy and science fiction. Recently, when I started to write professionally, one of the authors that I really have grown to love is Terry Pratchett.
Oh, yeah, the Discworld series.
The Discworld series, and that sort of humor combined with social satire. It's funny, it's fun to read, it's lighthearted, but it's also very deep at the same time. I don't write humor as much per se, but I do feel like I've been influenced by Pratchett more than many other authors that I've read.
That's awesome. So, let's see. So, I know one thing about this too is like, how do you find the time to write? Because like this is not your only thing, right?
No, I'm currently on active orders with the Army, so I work a 9 to 5 or an 8 to 6 or whatever the workload is for the day. The good thing about being a government employee, though, is we do get a lot of holidays. So whenever I think we got a 4-day coming up, that's going to be writing camp for me to sit down and to grind out as much content as I can. I did a lot of the writing. I wrote In the Valley of Magic. I wrote Call of the Guardian. Most of the Nightingale. All my books I wrote while I was still in reserve status before I was working full time, so I had a little bit more flexibility. But now I continue writing. I just kind of grind it out a little bit slower pace, and I use my time wisely. Use the weekends.
All right, yeah, using that time management that the Army really helps instill in all of us, right?
Right. So right now I work for a publisher called Fiction Vortex, and they specialize in shared universe episodic fiction. So if you imagine like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where you have a bunch of stories that interact, and you have characters that cross in between the different stories, it's the same thing. I manage a shared universe, a high fantasy universe that has 7 different authors, and basically, not only do I write my own material, such as my novel Call of the Guardian, which is a part of that universe, I also have to manage all the other authors' work to make sure that everything is consistent, to make sure that the stories overlap and they fit together and there's no like breach of canon. And it's a very interesting but time-consuming job.
Yeah, to make sure everything still fits. You're like, oh wait, this person said that this thing. Oh wait, so now we got like you got to get the whole team together on the same page. That's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, so the new authors that come in are always like, so how does magic work? And I got to give them a big spiel about all the mechanics of the history and the magic in their life, that kind of thing.
That way everyone's on the same page. That's awesome. So how do we find you? Like, how do we find your stuff?
So I have a website, and on my website I have a blog, and I also have a link to all my publications. A lot of the short stories are available to read for free online, and then other things like my books, links to where you can buy them. The website is www.jmwilliams.site. So
SITE, right?
SITE, like a website. www.jmwilliams.site. And also, you can come find me at the library this Saturday at 2 o'clock.